want to talk to you, though, tonight about a lady that's very much been in the headlines today, Michelle Mone, of course. She has been under fire. You'll be familiar with the story by now. It's all about the procurement of PPE contracts during COVID, the so-called VIP lanes, etc. You might have seen the YouTube documentary that was put out. Documentary, analysis, investigation, call it what you will. Also, of course, it was the interview as well at the weekend, wasn't there? Lots of people speaking out. Keir Starmer saying that she now shouldn't be in the House of Lords. Let's take a listen to that. Oh, well, whilst we're waiting for Keir Starmer and what his hot take is on the matter, Ben Habib, what do you make to it?
Of Michelle Mone?
Yes.
Well, I think she's entirely discredited herself. You know, anyone who lies for any reason whatsoever can never be trusted again, because the next time they open their mouth, you don't know whether they're telling you the truth or a lie. So fundamentally, she's undermined her position both in the House of Lords as well as in society, with her own family and with, frankly, anyone who interviews her on any subject. But as to the point about, you know, whether she should lose her peerage or not, I think there's another peer in the House of Lords who has some questions to answer about lobbying that he was doing during the pandemic on related but very similar kind of issue, you know, for the provision of coronavirus loans to Greensill, a company of which he was a director and from which he would have benefited greatly if those loans had been made. And an activity, lobbying as a former Prime Minister, an activity that he had said himself was
David
unacceptable.
Cameron,
well, I want to see if viewers know who I'm talking about. But this man has just been elevated, having been castigated during the Greensill scandal, for want of a better word. He's been elevated to the House of Lords, put above the MPs, and given one of the highest offices in the country. So when Sunak says he takes Michelle Mone incredibly seriously, I have to doubt him. Why would you elevate David Cameron to the House of Lords when he himself has some really serious questions to answer about his behaviour during lockdowns? And this is symptomatic of the Conservative Party. Michelle Mone is one example. I think Matt Hancock had a shareholding in a company that was providing PPE. Perhaps Richard knows more detail about that than I do. But they're all seemingly at it. And but should Michelle Mone lose her peerage? I don't think we'll see her in the House of Lords again. I think shame will prohibit her from visiting that.
You say Rishi Sunak takes Michelle Mone seriously. What you're meaning there is he apparently is saying that he takes this scandal seriously. Michelle Mone basically responded and hit back on Twitter to that, saying, what is Rishi Sunak even talking about? I was honest with the Cabinet Office, the government and the NHS in my dealings with them. They all knew about my involvement from the very beginning. She's been very active on Twitter today. She's saying things like, does Rishi Sunak stand to profit from the Moderna COVID vaccine during the pandemic?
You can't believe the thing she says now, Michelle.
It goes. Let's listen to Keir Starmer, though. Because to your point there, let's listen.
I think this is a shocking disgrace from top to bottom. But this needs to be seen in its context. Under this government, £7 billion was lost in fraud during COVID. I don't think she should be in the Lords. I think the government should be held to account for this. Who started the conversations with her in the first place is a question that the government now needs to answer.
Richard, your thoughts?
Well, I think that the words that Clement Attlee said to the academic Harold Lasky, a period of silence on your part would be welcome, is one that I think should apply to Michelle Mone. I thought her interview was pretty politically catastrophic. In terms of the substantive points, I mean, I think there are two issues here. One is about what happened during COVID in terms of procurement and government contracts. And to take the sympathetic side for one moment, the government was faced with the choice between speed and due diligence. Now, it should try to do as much due diligence as it can in that question of speed. But if we had a system that had so much red tape that the government wasn't acting quick enough, we'd also have criticism of the government there. That's the kind of thing that the COVID inquiry really should be unpicking. It's not clear to me that that's exactly really what the COVID inquiry is focusing on, but if it was doing a good job, that's the kind of thing it would look at. As for Michelle Mone's case, should she be in the Lords or not, it's interesting to me how our standards have changed, perhaps in a way for the better, a stronger sense of standards. Back in 2009, there was the cash for influence scandal in the House of Lords with Lord Taylor of Blackburn and Lord Truscott. who were accused in the case of Lord Taylor of, this was a sting from the Sunday Times, but soliciting £100,000 to ask questions in the House of Lords, and Lord Truscott was accused of soliciting £70,000 to ease the way for lobbyists. Now, in that case, those two members of the House of Lords were only suspended for 6 months and then went back to their jobs. Lord Truscott is still a member of the House of Lords today. Lord Taylor has passed away. And even in 2009, you had peers saying that was too harsh a punishment. They should be allowed to attend but not speak was the argument. So our standards have changed. We're a bit tougher now on our politicians, probably as a result of those kind of expenses scandals, and maybe that's not so bad a thing.
Well, Michelle Mone apparently made 66 million. It leaves 100,000 looking, decidedly unambitious.
Hold on, because she would say that she didn't make, there's no flies on me, I've watched the documentary and the interview, she would say if she was sitting here today that she didn't directly make anything at all. This trust that was set up, which is in her husband's name, got around about 60 million quid, and she indirectly, if he passes away or gets divorced or whatever it was, she would then indirectly benefit. That's what she would say if she was
here.
Do
you believe her, Michelle? Because she has admitted she's a liar. Do you believe that declaration?
Well, I don't know the ins and outs of the formations that she's got set up and the financial affairs and all the rest of it. Somebody needs to be asking some serious questions to get to the bottom of that. But at the end of the day, people do make profit in business.
Oh, absolutely.
And people made an astronomical amount of profit off the back of COVID. So, for example, I cannot help but think of companies like Pfizer. The billions that they made in profit off the back of the vaccine, and I am not suggesting wrongdoing before anyone gets upset. I'm merely suggesting that there were a lot of people, testing companies. You had so many people that were making a small fortune. So then for me, there is a question of, is it immoral to make profit off a problem?
Well, I don't think making profit is immoral. If you're profiteering at the expense, dramatic expense of a vulnerable entity, in this case the British state, during a time of need, then you've got to do some very serious introspection about your own moral compass. But Michelle Mone denied the fact that she had any relationship with MedPro, that her husband had any relationship with MedPro. And that's my problem with Michelle Mone, is she has now admitted that she lied. So you can't believe anything else she says. And I just want to come back to the point that actually Keir Starmer made. Sorry, I was going to attribute it to you, Richard. But he made a very good point, which I'd forgotten, that Lord Agnew resigned.
He did.
As a Minister of the Treasury in early 2022 because of the obvious fraudulent abuse of the coronavirus loan scheme.
He was calling it like schoolboy errors and stuff like that, he was saying about, and the ineffectiveness and the seeming lack of appetite to try and kind of get on top of that.
And can I just say one more thing before we go?
Go on, it's not before we go, before we bring Richard back in.
We keep hearing Jeremy Hunt hasn't got enough latitude to make tax cuts. But they spend money like Billio, like it's being printed. They do actually print it just for the sake of spending it. But, 500 million to the French for not doing the borders, another 200 million last year, 300 million to Rwanda, billions in COP28. And I could go on and on.
It could go on and on. We'd still be sitting here at 7:15 with him reeling out all of the spending. But anyway, Richard.
Just to say quickly, the reality is that in Michelle Mone's particular case, her credibility is shot. And traditionally, the House of Lords was a self-regulating body. Before the 2009 scandal, I believe the last time that a member of the House of Lords was suspended was during the English Civil War. And so normally it was seen that members of the House of Lords had a bit of self-respect and dignity and would remove themselves from proceedings. Now, one would say she has taken a leave of absence from the House of Lords. She may want to consider making that a permanent leave of absence. That is now a reform of the House of Lords that's happened in the last decade or so, when people can actually just leave once you're in. It's like Hotel California. Once you were in, you could never leave. Now you can, and I think she should consider her position.
But if you felt that you'd done nothing wrong, I'm playing devil's advocate, putting the other side. If you was Michelle Mone, you felt you'd done nothing wrong, and you were determined to, because I'm looking at her social media and all the rest of it, and she's really kind of going for it. She's decided, after years of being silent, she's decided the woman is silent no more. So she obviously thinks she's innocent. She wants to clear her name. So she'll be sitting there thinking, well, why should I resign?
If she genuinely believes and knows that she did nothing wrong, and she feels that her name can be truly vindicated, then that might be a consideration. But on the other hand, I think kind of hanging around, I thought the way that she conducted the interview over the weekend, her defiance bordered on having a cloth ear, really is not beneficial to her reputation. It's certainly not beneficial to the reputation of the upper chamber as well.
Well, I'll give you guys the final say on that. If you were accused, by the way, though, of making all this money from the taxpayer, would you do documentaries, PR interviews, whatever people want to call them, dressed head to toe in designer gear in a huge mansion? I don't know. Sometimes I think people do it perhaps help themselves.